Yeah, eat, sleep, fantasy, you rockin' with the best. NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. We talking mock drafts, running backs, better follow the conversation with John, Dale, Christian, and Armando. Screaming Eat Nation, we doing what we like. Tune in every week, guarantee we get it hype. Fantasy, football enthusiasts, I know you plan to be joining us on Eat, Sleep, Fantasy. Yeah, Eat, Sleep, Fantasy. Eat, Sleep, Fantasy.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Eat, Sleep, Fantasy Football Podcast, also known as the Newborns of Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Christian Brito, and joining me once again is Mr. Dale DeMott. What's up, Dale?
I'm back. I shouldn't have done that. It's been a while since I recorded, and as you were introducing me, I was thinking, what can I say that's catchy, that's cool, hip, and it just turned into a old dad all over again. I'm excited to record, man.
When you get the check at a restaurant, what's the go-to thing that you say? Because I have an idea of what it is.
Depends. Yeah, I usually do have some quirky joke to tell the waitress. I'm usually pretty charming in a restaurant.
Is it let's see the damage?
The charm. Oh yeah. I've said that one before.
Is it this is why I make the big bucks? It's something along those lines, man.
I joke and I point to my 2-year-old and say that she's going to pay for it. They love that stuff. They love it.
Christ. Officially
again. So for those that don't know, I was on a little 1-week hiatus because my second daughter, Dorothy Claire, was born last October 18th, so last week. Appreciate everybody's. I know I got some messages congratulating me and all that stuff. I appreciate it. We have good listeners, man, because a lot of them genuinely cared and said congratulations, which was nice.
I don't think I sent you anything.
I appreciate all you guys. No, I got nothing.
Probably nothing. Congrats, man.
Thanks, buddy. Crazy times, though. Usually, with my firstborn, my wife was in labor for 12 hours, and I don't know, I guess, times can vary depending on the woman and the birth and all that stuff. But this time, the baby was born. Oh, dude, you have no idea. Super quick. We woke up, called the midwife. The midwife said, okay, if things progress any more, give me a call. I called her, and I said, I think the baby's coming out. And before I even finished my sentence, the baby was out. Without a doctor, it was just me and my wife in the bathtub. I wasn't in the bathtub with my wife. It was just, my wife was in the bathtub and I was sitting next to her.
Okay.
And she was holding the baby.
Hold on. How big is it? Like a normal size bathtub?
Yeah.
You definitely don't fit in there.
No, it wasn't a hot tub. No, it was like a regular tub.
I love how I'm trying to ruin this magical moment.
It was fun, but gave birth to a baby without any assistance, which was crazy. So 20 minutes later, one of the assistants came and helped with the placenta and all that other stuff, and everybody's happy and healthy.
I'm going to do what we did 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago at this point.
Almost 3
years ago. Did you do anything with the placenta? Will you be cooking it?
The first one, if you guys remember, I did dehydrate it, and it didn't come out very well. I didn't trust it, so we threw it away. This time, it is in a freezer bag, in a 1-gallon freezer bag in my freezer, and I don't know what we're going to do with it. My wife, she would like to dehydrate it and make it encapsulate it to, it supposedly helps with postpartum and stuff. I don't know. But it's in our freezer. Why don't you just
I imagine, I don't have any knowledge of this. I imagine that this would just taste like a liver steak. Why don't you do that?
That's what I'm. If you're trying to get me to try to eat it, it's not a chance. But it looks like that. It looks like a no. It looks disgusting.
You heard it here first. But Dale does not go down on women who are on their period. Let's move on to. I don't know why I said that. I don't.
You're trying to ruin the magical moment. That's what you're doing. You're having an innate ability.
Great job. So on this episode of Fantasy Football, it's 5 minutes in. We've talked no fantasy. Not a word of fantasy, by the way.
Unless you want to have a baby, and then this is your fantasy, maybe.
Oh, that's beautiful. Anyways, we've got a little bit of news, and then what we want to focus on for the primary portion of this episode is not babies, but rest of season ranks, and just, guys that we like rest of season, guys we don't like rest of season, and just kind of pointing that out there, and kind of just reflecting on the first 8 weeks and how the next, 8 weeks or so of the fantasy season will go, because a lot of you are going to make it all the way to your fantasy championship. So we're at the halfway point of the full fantasy season. We're more than halfway if we're just talking about the regular season, the 13 games for most people. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit of news, Dale.
All right. There's some good news, some whatever news. I'll go to the kind of big stuff, and some of this could have been covered yesterday. Mark Walton, the Dolphins, he, basically became lead back in the Miami Dolphins. It doesn't mean much. I don't know if we need to talk too much about it. I guess he's rosterable, but he's not going to help you win games. Right?
He is a RB 3 or 4 on bye weeks.
Yep.
Aha. But Kenyon Drake, though, the other side of that, right? He's the one that goes to the Cardinals with both of their running backs banged up. Probably maybe even gets to start this week.
I think he's going to get the start this week. I think Chase Edmonds will be out for a few weeks, and DJ, initially they wanted to hold him out through their bye, but given Chase Edmonds' availability and the fact that Kenyon Drake is probably not very good, David Johnson, we'll see if he even suits up or what this week. It doesn't look like it, but you never know. He's not ruled out yet, so we'll see.
In much more concerning injury news, I would like to move on to Brandon Cooks and kind of retouch on this issue, because his concussion issue seems to have gotten a little bit worse, because now he's visiting a specialist in Pittsburgh. This is Brandon Cooks' 4th concussion and his 2nd in about a month time frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I'm a little, let's put fantasy aside. I know we kind of always do this, but, this is a human being's health we're talking about here first and foremost. So that sucks for him personally.
Cooks is going to miss some time.
Fantasy-wise.
I'm going to say that right off the bat. When you have multiple concussions like this, it's not good. The doctors need to feel confident that not only have your current concussion symptoms subsided, but that they're minimizing risk for future concussions. And then you kind of put into that the concerns as a human being, right? Cooks has been a good wide receiver, but how does he feel about his career moving forward? When you start to add things up this much and you start getting that banged up in the head, that's something that, if I'm looking at this from a fantasy perspective, I'm worried if I'm a Brandon Cooks owner for the rest of this season and in Dynasty that he may not play anymore, and he may not be cleared for a while, may not even be up to him. So that being said, I think the benefactors of this specific injury is a player who is not necessarily relevant when Cooks is not there, but is when he isn't, and that's Josh Reynolds. Yeah. So
100%. Last week, Josh Reynolds had a 55% snap share. So I'm sorry, 55, not 55%. He had 55 snaps. What is the percentage here? I'm sorry, I should have looked that up. But he's definitely getting a lot more work with Cooks out for sure.
Cooper Kupp, who is the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy, will continue to see those high amounts of targets. And that is I guess, good sign for him, I guess, is the optimism. But Robert Woods is the player that I want to talk about, who really has only had one good game so far this season. Everything else has been whatever. Is another guy who, after the bye at Pittsburgh, I think could be a benefactor for this offense.
Yeah. Robert Woods played 98% of the snaps last week, and Josh Reynolds played 89% of the snaps. So they're both getting on the field a ton with Brandon. I mean, obviously Robert Woods is, but Josh Reynolds, his usage is going to spike, and he was looking at around 20 or 30% snap percentage before Cook's injury. So the fact that he's on the field or was on the field almost 90% of the time is pretty good. I think if there is a wide receiver handcuff, Josh Reynolds is it.
Yep. All right.
Some more news. James Conner, he is limited all this week in practice. He probably won't play, but Mike Tomlin said he doesn't really need a practice in order to play. So we got to keep an eye on James Conner. Obviously, Jalen Samuel will be the beneficiary there if James Conner does miss time.
As far as kicker news goes, I feel like we do this and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but a lot of people need kickers, and I just want to quickly say the Patriots kicker has always traditionally been great. Mike Nugent was supposed to be their answer with Gostkowski being injured. He wasn't, so Nick Folk has been signed, and he is going to be the Patriots kicker moving forward for whatever that's worth, right? Yeah, a lot of people want kickers week to week. Patriots score a lot. Patriots are elite. I fucking hate the Patriots. Let's move on.
Yeah. And that's about it, really. I mean, there's little stupid news here and there. I don't know. There's really nothing. Andy Dalton is benched for Ryan Finley. So if or when AJ Green returns, probably is not great for him. We'll see.
Really dry trade day for the NFL.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Joe Flacco is not going to play this week. In probably a couple weeks. That is horrible for Cortland Sutton owners. And you'll probably see a lot of Royce Freeman. Sorry, I blanked on his name for a second.
Royce? All right, cool.
All right.
So we're going...
Wait, hold on. Before we get into these rest of the season rankings, because we're done with the news now, really, it's just one thing. You guys, I'm really excited. I think Christian knows about it because I posted in the chat, but he ignores me a lot. John and myself, John Chapman, he co-hosts this lovely podcast, and he also does 49ers Rush podcast, all things 49ers. We are doing commentary on the Thursday night game. So when you're listening to you're listening to this on a Wednesday, so tomorrow night, we will be commentating live on an app called Hot Mic. If you guys get out your iPhones, download Hot Mic. There is an invite code. The invite code is Rush ESF, all one word. RUSHESF. And that'll basically get you into the app because you need to have a special code just to get in. But once you get that, you look for the Thursday night game. You select me and John, and the app will sync to your TV and will give you commentary. So there's going to be a lot of football commentary from John and a lot of fantasy football commentary from both of us. So I am not going to give that much play-by-play. That's going to be John's job because he's really good at that, and I'm not. And but we're going to give fantasy advice, so it'll be basically commentary like if you were listening on TV. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, that does sound like fun.
Go to Hot Mic. That's the app, and then the invite code is Rush ESF,
right,
all one word.
Right
Look
now,
for us.
While we're talking,
It's fun. You should. All right, so let's get into the rest of the season rankings. I'm going to keep talking about this. You're going to follow us on social
Hot
media.
Mic, M-I-C, right? Not Mike like the guy.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep.
Doing it right now.
Cool.
Rush
All right,
ESF,
so rest
right?
of the season. Yes.
Doing it right
So
now.
rest of the season rankings, we can go by position.
Hold on, it's
Brito.
asking me
we
for
can do...
my password. I'll just use Face ID. Okay. It's downloading.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, just let me know.
So
please.
I'm opening the app. It says sign up or log in. So I guess I have to sign up.
Oh, yeah.
And then the code is
sign up.
Rush ESF.
ESF.
And then redeem.
The invite code. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then it just asked me for my email. Cool. That was easy. That was painless.
Yeah. It's fun. And the cool thing about the app, it's pretty cool. They just want to bring alternatives to your commentary that you hear. So all sports they're going to be doing. They're still fairly new to the market, but they're going to be doing. I think they're doing World Series now with a bunch of people, and you can just if you have a favorite writer or something that's on the app, you can listen to them commentate or whatever. I'm sure it's going to grow, and but John and myself, I think we're going to be the leaders on this app moving forward. So check it out. We're going to do the 49ers and Cardinals game. Already started prepping for it.
Cool, man. I'm excited about that.
It's going to be cool.
All right.
So, quarterbacks, rest of season quarterbacks.
Yeah. So I'm going to just quickly list off the league leaders in fantasy scoring at the quarterback position through 8 weeks. Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, and Dak Prescott are your top 5 quarterbacks, followed by Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford round out your top 10. I think some other notable names that I would like to mention: Carson Wentz, Gardner Minshew, and Jared Goff are all cracking your top 15.
Okay. So there's a couple different ways we can do this. I'll just start off here. One name that probably should be at least in the top 15 rest of season is Baker Mayfield. I've said it before. I love his rest of season schedule. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I know he hasn't done well, and people are probably rolling their eyes like, okay, whatever, right? But his schedule looks good, and he could throw touchdown passes. I mean, starting week 11 is Pitt, Miami, Pitt, Cincinnati, Arizona, and that's a strong five game slate there. So I do, and I'll talk about Odell Beckham Jr. when we talk about wide receivers, but Baker Mayfield deserves to be in the top 15. I'm not saying he's a home run hitter, but he's serviceable. All
right. Speaking of serviceable, I don't know, man. I don't know. Schedule is great. But
so who am I putting ahead of him?
I'm going to give you someone I'd rather have, and you tell me yes or no. Okay? Even though his schedule is a little harder, because there's 2 games against Atlanta and a game against Tampa Bay in there, and I'd rather have that than the great schedule for Baker Mayfield and the whatever he's been this year. After Week 9 bye, give me Drew Brees, who in his 2 complete games that he's played has thrown for over 370 yards. His stats, the 2 games that he's played, has looked almost identical, with 43 attempts in both games and 370 in 2 and 373 in 3 in his 2 games that he played. Obviously, the second game that he played at the Rams, he got hurt right off the bat very early, so he did not finish that game and then was out for 5 weeks with that thumb injury. But off the bye, Drew Brees, who is actually in some leagues even free, will definitely be a top 10 quarterback after the bye.
Yeah, I think 100% you're right. I mean, this, there's a difference. We look at, say, Baker Mayfield, and we say he has talent around him. He has Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. But Drew Brees is his skill level is on a whole different level, obviously, right? I don't need to say that.
Right.
But the talent in that offense is crazy. Michael Thomas is having a career year, and maybe, what do you want to call it? Like a Hall of Fame type numbers, right, for this year. And then, of course, Alvin Kamara. It's crazy what he is going to do for the rest of the season. I agree. I think Drew Brees can be a top 10 quarterback for the rest of the season, and people are already forgotten about him because they've already replaced him on their roster. They have somebody like maybe Kyler Murray or Carson Wentz already, and they kind of lived without him. They're fine, but Drew Brees is definitely.
I want to talk about a couple guys. Now we've covered. I don't know what to tell you about Baker Mayfield, man. Some people are going to agree with you. I get it. You could be right, but I'm probably not going to deal with it.
I mean, you're looking at, he plays, like I said, He plays Pitt twice, right? Is that what I said? Hold on, I'm going to go back really quick. Yeah, he plays Pitt twice and Miami. So Pittsburgh allowed Ryan Fitzpatrick to score twice on him, and then you have Miami sandwiched in between that. Those 3 games alone, week 11, 12, and 13, if whatever quarterback you have or you're even wishy-washy on, Baker Mayfield is going to do very well those 3 weeks for you. Just enough for the playoff push, 11, 12, and week 11, 12, and 13.
Okay. So let's talk about a couple guys who I think have potentially exceeded expectations, some surprising, some not, at the beginning of this year, and talk about their outlook for the rest of the year. I want to talk a little bit about a guy who is always in the top 10, never gets drafted there, and in my opinion will continue to be in the top 10 for the rest of this season, and people will continue to forget about it, and that's Dak Prescott. He's been a top 10 quarterback every year of his career. He is the number 7 quarterback right now through the first 8 weeks. How do you see his season shaping out for the rest of this year?
I'm a little nervous late into the season.
Okay.
He has...
Tell me why.
Well, he has to begin the year, he had a very soft schedule. Let's be honest. I mean, he had a 400-yard game week 1 against the Giants.
Yes, he has played. But remember the division he's in, right? We're looking at he still has, coming off the bye, the Giants again, Philly again. Those have been some of the worst pass defenses in the league. Yeah. Still plays Washington, still got Detroit in there. But yes, like you mentioned, there are some rough games. There's New England, there's Buffalo, there's Chicago. Those are not good matchups. So do you think he's matchup dependent, though?
No. I think if you have him, you're starting him. They're just going to be tougher games for him, that's all.
Because, for example, I'm gonna throw this out there. On paper, Green Bay is supposed to have been his toughest matchup so far this year. He threw for 3 interceptions. This is true. But he also threw for 463 yards.
Yeah.
So,
okay, let me put a scenario out here for you. Week 12 and 13, New England and Buffalo.
I'm not starting him against New England at New England. That's about the only game on his schedule that I'm not starting back Dak Prescott. That's it.
But at New England, Buffalo, then
I'll play him
Chicago.
versus Buffalo in Dallas, yes.
If you have somebody like Baker Mayfield on
I'd
your
rather
bench,
have Dak Prescott playing against Buffalo in Dallas than Baker Mayfield.
Then Baker Mayfield playing Pitt?
Unless it's Miami, who just lost the only remaining player on their team that I can fucking name on defense, and Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
Well, they acquired Aqib Talib by trade, but whatever.
Right.
That's not important at all.
No.
Poor Dolphins, man. Hey, quick question. Just real quick question. Will the Dolphins win a game this season?
No.
No?
Not a chance.
Not a chance?
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Last night was their chance, and they blew it.
They've had a couple chances. But they...
All right. I'm going to give you one more guy here that I want to talk about who has kind of... You went guys that are underperforming in Baker Mayfield. I'm going to go a guy who initially it was like, okay, he's overperforming. He stayed up there in Lamar Jackson, right? So let's talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson because I think we need to after the rough game at Seattle, now going into the bye week, and then New England, right? So...
Yeah.
143 passing yards. Only 20 passing attempts. Looks ugly. But he ran for 116 fucking yards again.
Yeah.
That's his 3rd time this season eclipsing 100 yards rushing.
Yep.
So tell me, will Lamar Jackson at any point this year not be startable because he's basically a running back who also throws the ball?
He's startable every week. I'm going to start him with confidence, even against New England. Yeah, I would. Look, obviously, I've been saying obviously a lot today. I'm sorry, I'm off my game. New England is
LOL.
really, really good, probably the best defense, at least the top two defense in the NFL,
It's
right?
number one.
With San Francisco. But
At least scoring wise in fantasy, it's number one for sure.
right, sure. But you're gonna have to start him. I mean, even if he throws for 130 yards and a touchdown, he's going to rush. I don't care. He's going to rush for 60 or 70 yards. It doesn't matter the team. So that's throwing in another touchdown. That's still a 20-point week.
Dude, you want to hear something disgusting? Not
What?
counting the quarterbacks, the only player to outscore the Patriots defense so far this year is Christian McCaffrey.
That's crazy.
Patriots defense has scored as much as more than everyone but Christian McCaffrey. That's unheard of.
Mm-hmm. And Lamar Jackson, through 7 played games so far for him, he's only had 2 games that he's thrown an interception in. So he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He had a horrible game against the Steelers and a not-so-good game against Cleveland. And he still racked up fantasy points, by the way, but I'm just saying he does not throw the ball around very loosely.
Okay.
They control. I think the Ravens are doing exactly what they need to do with him.
Yes.
And it's working out great.
I'm going to give you a stat. And I think the stat should blow your mind, but maybe it might not.
I'm ready. Blow my mind.
Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards than Mark Ingram, the Baltimore's leading running back.
Interesting. You know, week to week, you kind of see that, but here in over a 7-week period, that's pretty nuts.
So I'm going to go ahead and name some players that Lamar Jackson has more rushing yards because right now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He is 10th in the league in rushing yards. 10th in the league in rushing yards at the quarterback position.
And he's throwing over 200 yards a game.
And
so.
he's throwing over, and he has more than a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, like you mentioned. He's not throwing an absurd amount of picks either, but he's got more rushing yards than James Conner. He's got more rushing yards than David Montgomery. I started low. I'm going to go higher.
Right, sure,
Ready for this?
Sure, go higher.
More rushing yards than Sony Michel. More rushing yards than Aaron Jones. More rushing yards than Carlos Hyde.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah, name the list of players that have more rushing yards than Lamar Jackson is very short. Cook, Fournette, Chubb, McCaffrey, Carson, Jacobs, Zeke, Mack, and Henry. That's it.
Okay, so now that we're talking rest of the season, I got a question for you, and I know people are going to roll their eyes at this because it might. I don't think it's a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Rest of the season, given Patrick Mahomes' health, and they're saying he could have been ready last week. We don't blah blah blah. Given his health, would you rank Lamar Jackson ahead of Patrick Mahomes rest of the season?
Let's see. You got to buy. Mahomes will be back week 10 is the report, right?
Sure.
So This is week 9, so they're basically going to be back at the same time. I will probably not because the schedule includes New England at the Rams and versus San Francisco and at Buffalo. So you got 4 tough games plus a bye for Jackson.
But Patrick Mahomes, his playoff schedule is at New England, Denver, then at Chicago, 14, 15, 16. That scares me away. I'm telling you right now, I will rank Jackson ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Not an easy decision, but fantasy-wise, rest of season fantasy-wise.
I'm not, because even though Mahomes has been banged
Patrick
up, he's right there amongst the league leaders in scoring, and has been just as good, if not better, when he's on the field. So Mahomes, rest of season for me would probably be. You got that. Everybody's still got a bye, so let's count it as if he is out for a bye or whatever. He's probably top 3 still. It's probably I'm probably gonna go. Lamar Jackson is 4th on my rest of season rankings, behind some
4th.
What did I say?
You said fourth?
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson fourth?
Behind some combination of Mahomes, Wilson, and Watson.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
All right. No, we know, and we've talked about this on the podcast, Russell Wilson, his history of slowing down in the second half of the season.
No, that's the opposite. The opposite. He usually turns it on second half of the season.
Well, it looks like he turned it on the first half, and it looks like he's going to turn it off the second half is what I'm trying to say.
You read that backwards, Dale.
He
Don't
hasn't
do this
broken
to me.
250 in the last 2 weeks.
Hey. Leave him alone. Don't curse me. I have him in almost every league.
I do too, actually. Actually, I just traded. Grade this trade for me. I had a really hard time, and I got a lot of flack for it. Can you help me out?
Okay.
This goes with the rest of the season rankings.
Sure.
Okay. I traded away Russell Wilson, Kenny Golladay, and Austin Hooper.
Okay.
Granted, I was in first place. And I got back Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Jacoby Brissett.
Okay, you traded Golladay. Hold on. I got to look at my
Golladay
rankings.
for Hill.
You got probably the best player in the. Let me see. Rest of season. This is how I like to do it. Rest of season, and then I'm going to kind of score it out. But initial reaction is you won that trade, but you're going to start Brissett week to week.
Probably not. I have Sam Darnold. Well,
Yeah, so
that
probably
was,
yes.
That was a total segue.
I feel like you could go out there and acquire a top. Why can't you go acquire Dak Prescott? Everybody's low on that guy for some fucking reason.
Yeah. Maybe I could. Maybe I can. But
Okay.
my initial thought was I'll win this trade slightly. And now that I have this team set, and especially that Golladay just had a huge game, I'm thinking, fuck, like, man, I had a good first place
You
team.
got a top 5 receiver rest of season.
Sure.
And you traded away
I
a
got the best
top
tight end.
15 wide receiver to get him. Okay, let's start there. You got a top 3 tight end, and you traded away a top 10 tight end to get him.
Right.
And Austin Hooper might be like a top 6 tight end rest of season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then
I
you
still think
traded
Austin Hooper.
away a top 3 quarterback,
Quarterback, yeah.
and got a
Top 20.
top 20 quarterback. So you need to go acquire a quarterback, probably, because I don't think you can get by rest of so early, drafting or whatever. I may not, whatever, but you at this point in the season, you need to go find a quarterback and see who's going to stick. And dude, I think you can acquire some guys like we mentioned. You can acquire a cheap Drew Brees. You can acquire a cheap Dak Prescott, and make up enough there where that other trade, which I think you won, looks good. So, and I like having quarterbacks at this point in the season, but I think you did just fine with that trade.
Okay.
So, I usually would hurt your confidence, but not today. Good trade.
All right.
I feel like I need to say something mean to you now.
Yeah, you do. It's okay.
You still gaining weight?
Talking
No,
about- You tell me how ugly my baby looks?
your baby's cute. I don't know, dude. That can't be your kid.
Babies, babies are usually pretty ugly. I think because my baby, well, this is going to sound weird. The baby came out so fast.
There was no squishing.
you know,
That's
maybe-
a real thing.
yeah,
That's a real thing.
yeah.
No cone head, no squished cheeks, no
exactly.
swollen eyes.
Exactly. Just slid right out. Man, if you only knew. So my wife was in the bathtub and she was like, I think the baby's coming out. I look behind and I said, no. I said, I don't think the baby's coming right now. It didn't look any different. Then I looked away and then she goes, no, I think I feel something. I looked again, literally like 2 minutes later, and I saw the head like starting to poke out. That is the craziest thing ever.
By the way, childbirth
And then-
is disgusting.
Dude, it's crazy. Anyways, all right, let's talk about running backs.
Okay. I was going to start talking about your sex life with your wife, but let's move on. Running backs. Let's talk about
not talk about
the
that.
top 10 scorers at the running back position, and then perhaps talk about some guys, some notable guys that are not in that group.
All right.
Number one running back and number two running backs so far this season are Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, who have been electric on both the running and receiving ends. They've looked great, man. They really have. Are they your 1-2 moving forward?
Yeah. Yes.
So no Zeke, no Barkley, no Fournette, no Kamara. Those guys are not in consideration for your 1-2.
1-2 for me, McCaffrey and Cook. No question.
Okay.
Zeke and Barkley, look, if you're going to put them, all four of them kind of together, I'm not going to laugh at you, but I think Cook and McCaffrey are in a league of their own.
Okay. After that, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, and Nick Chubb round out the top five. I think Nick Chubb is probably, for me, the most surprising on that list.
Sure.
Because the offense hasn't looked great, but he's still been very solid, especially rushing the ball with 738 rushing yards, second in the league in that category second in the league in that category, only behind Dalvin Cook.
He is who I thought he was.
And 6 rushing touchdowns. Behind them, you've got Zeke, Fournette, Carson, Henry, and Ingram to round out your top 10 running backs. So let's talk a little bit about guys in that list who perhaps have overperformed and underperformed outside of that list afterward. So
let's talk about Leonard Fournette.
Okay, let's talk about Fournette, and then I feel like we need to continue to have the Austin Eckler conversation. So let's start with Fournette, who has 163 attempts, who is leading the league in attempts, and 791 rushing yards. So forgive me with my previous stat with Chubb being second. Chubb is actually third in the league in rushing yards. Apologies on that stat correcting right now. Fournette is second in the league in rushing yards with his 163 attempts and 791 rushing yards. Yeah. That pace, that attempts pace is not going to go away.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. They start off slow. I think that Jacksonville is like, all right, let's just kind of, not give them a full workload. And they went 3 games with 15 or less attempts, and they're like, screw this. We're going to run into the ground. And week 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, he's had over 20 attempts except for last week against the Jets, but he had 19. But, yeah, he is going to continue to get 20-plus carries and throw in a couple of receptions. I mean,
dude, that's what I want to throw.
Last week he had 7 targets.
Yes, this is what I want to throw
2 weeks
out
ago
there.
He had 6.
Yeah. It's not that he's lighting the world up with the receiving yards. 263 receiving yards is nothing to be ashamed of. That's good. Mm-hmm. His targets are on pace with the receiving backs. So he is 5th in the league in receiving in targets, behind only Austin Eckler, James White, Christian McCaffrey, and Tariq Cohen.
Yeah.
And
we don't
awesome.
think Leonard Fournette as a pass catching back, do we?
Don't. We think of him as being able to do that, but not like we don't think of him as Christian McCaffrey like in terms of receptions and targets. And that's pretty much like the volume that he's getting. Obviously, he hasn't been as effective with it in that, but 45 targets so far this season is a lot to go with the 163 attempts. You're talking about 200 plus opportunities already this season. You project that out, you're talking about over 400 opportunities to touch the ball between attempts and targets. That's an astronomical number, which even if he weren't to be efficient with it, which he is at 4.9 yards a carry, even if he wasn't, he's still like going to force his way into being a top 5 running back. And even if it's ugly at times, it's going to work. You can't have that much volume and not eventually break through.
Now the question is, Nick Foles is cleared to play after their bye week, so
he won't start.
Week 11. I'm sorry?
He won't start.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask. You sure about that?
Nope. But he shouldn't.
He shouldn't. It should be
His mustache is
Minshew
not as
for
good.
sure.
He can't fucking throw it over the mountains over there.
But his pass catching that we're talking about, that is a huge plus right now, will go away if Foles comes back. So something to monitor. I don't think it's going to diminish Fournette's value that much, but like you said, the targets and the receptions are there where it's enough to give him a little bit of a bump over some of the other guys in our rest of season rankings. So Leonard Fournette right now would be over guys like Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs, those guys. He's definitely going to be over there.
I'd put Leonard Fournette about 5th in my rest of seasons, more or less.
Over Chubb?
Probably. The guy that would be in contention for me would be Carson, because I just think that offense is going to continue to hum and be good.
You remember Carson Daly? Are you old enough?
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
Total Request Live.
Rest in peace, Carson Daly.
Did he die?
No, I'm joking.
Oh. Why would you say that?
I don't know.
You're gonna feel really bad if he dies.
I'm a bad person. Sorry.
Dude, bring
TRL
TRL
I don't know why I
back,
even
man.
said that. Why did I say that? I don't know.
I voted one time for a song on TRL.
Did you? Oh, you're a loser.
I'll give you... yeah.
What song did you vote for? Let me guess. Back that ass up by Juvenile.
No, it was later than that. You got to think 2000s. You got to remember that I used to listen to... I don't even want to get into it.
I want it that way.
No, man. You want? Okay, do you remember a band called POD?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one big song they had.
Yeah. They had like two big
what
songs.
Is that? What is that?
Man, I wish I could remember. I'm gonna have to type this on my loud ass keyboard.
By the way, I let you edit one episode last week.
2. And they
And
both
both of
got
them
taken
got
down
flagged
for
on
copyright
YouTube.
because I put in reggaeton music at the end.
I got the email saying that it was declined. I was like,
Fucking
That's what
YouTube.
happens.
It was only 15 seconds, and they were like, no. Youth of the Nation, by the way,
oh, yeah.
was the song that you're probably thinking about. But there's a couple more, Alive and Boom.
Oh, yeah. Alive, that's what I'm thinking of.
Youth of the
so
Nation was an
alive.
awesome song, by the way. I think that's the one that I was voting for.
Did you get inspired?
Probably.
God. All right. So you want to talk about Austin Eckler a little bit? Talk about him.
All right.
He's not. I'm telling you, he's not an RB2 for me rest of the season.
What is he? I don't know if that means he's higher or lower. You got to specify.
He, I think, is like a RB25 to RB30.
Oh, that's gross. That's gross. That's gross because right now he is RB4 on the season, even though he only has 72 rushing attempts, which is by far the lowest of a top 12 running back. So let's see here.
I'm telling you. I mean, look. I mean, you're playing Melvin Gordon over him, aren't you?
Yeah, because he looked terrible. Austin Eckler looked
so
terrible in Week 8.
You're playing Devonta Freeman over him. Now you're playing David Montgomery. Now that it seems like they've unleashed him a little bit. 27 rushing attempts last week.
Yeah.
So you're playing David Montgomery over him. You're playing David Johnson over him as long as he's healthy.
I don't know, man.
There's not. I would even say now with Flacco out, you're playing.
I just
Phillip
think
Lindsay
Eckler's
with
a
confidence
better
over him.
running back than Melvin Gordon. Am I crazy? Running back. I'm not saying wide receiver. I'm saying I think Eckler's a better back, period. Complete back. And he doesn't get the volume. But whatever. He's definitely a better receiver, and he's still going to keep that role. 25 to 30. I'd say low-end RB2 rest of the season. But yeah, he's not going to be the top 5 guy that he's been.
Right. Interesting. What are you doing, David Johnson? If you have David Johnson rest of the season, it sucks because we don't know what his health situation is. So I can't put him in a top 10 Although I think he's top 10 talent when healthy. You just can't put him in the top 10, right?
He misses two more games, in my opinion. Week 9 and Week 10. On top of
rest
that,
of the season, a trade. David Johnson, Tevin Coleman. Are you taking David Johnson?
Tevin Coleman rest of the season, and that's actually not close for me.
What about Sony Michel?
Okay, so Johnson? Let me finish here. All right.
I'm going to let you finish.
All right. Let's say you're trying to make a playoff push, and you got a team that's interested in David Johnson and is willing to give you something for him. You need to get rid of him now. He is not usable until the playoffs. Not usable. Because, ready for this? Week 9, which he's going to miss anyways, would have been against San Francisco. That's fine. Okay. Week 10, he's going to miss as well. But that would have been cross-country at Tampa Bay. All right, you ready for this? Week 11, when he's going to come back, is at San Francisco. You're not starting him. And then Week 12 is a bye.
Yep.
I want nothing to do with David Johnson.
Yeah.
He is Week 14 through 16. You're hoping that you can get something versus Pitt versus Cleveland in the playoffs. But right now, I'm trading David Johnson the hell away and getting whatever I can for him.
But what can you get for him?
Who did you just say? I think you can get Tevin Coleman.
You think so?
I think you can get Tevin Coleman.
After this big game?
After his big game, because the guy who has Tevin Coleman thinks, hey, I'm selling Tevin Coleman high.
Yeah.
But, man, I don't think Tevin Coleman's going away. Those attempts have been there. Those attempts...
yeah. And Brito, a little banged up. We're not really sure.
Yeah. And, I understand he only ran the ball 11 times this past game, but it was 105 yards and 4 total touchdowns, and it was an absolute rout. And the previous games were 20-plus touches in both of those games. So Tevin Coleman's here to stay, in my opinion. And he's actually a guy that I wanted to talk about. Rest of season, Tevin Coleman. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Top 12.
Who?
Top 12.
Who?
Tevin Coleman.
That's not crazy. And
why? Can you give me something for that?
Gasp.
One.
Look, you're riding a wave right now.
He's already okay. I'm not riding a wave. You ready for this? Okay.
He had 6 fantasy points against Washington Redskins.
Yeah, but that was also like they didn't need to do. They shut out the Redskins. They didn't do anything in that game.
Yeah.
Listen, man. They still have a bunch of games here against that I believe will be higher scoring, even with the San Francisco defense being who they are or who they've whatever. I'm just the workload is there. The offense wants to go through the running backs, and his competition is fading. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
If he gets 20 touches again, like he did the previous 2 or 3 weeks before this monster game, the workload was there. And then he has the monster game. We continue that, and I think just moving forward, he is going to be that guy. I don't think I'm being crazy. If we're looking at like rest of season rankings on like Fantasy Pros, for example, he's 18th. So I don't think I'm going crazy here. I'd rather have him over guys here. Listen, here are some guys ahead of him in rest of season rankings that I don't think it's even close. David Johnson, James Conner, Sonny Michel, and Le'Veon Bell. I'd rather have Tevin Coleman rest of season than all of those guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes?
That's not crazy? Yeah.
So that would put him, even if you are conservative, that would put him, what, 14th? Then you're kind of nitpicking. Would you rather have Tevin Coleman or Todd Gurley? I'm probably going Tevin Coleman.
Sure.
Would you rather have Tevin Coleman or... This is where it starts to get tough. Rather have Tevin Coleman or Mark Ingram?
I think Tevin Coleman, and you know why? Well,
I think Tevin Coleman's going to have more volume, and the team is better.
I do too. Well, I mean, the offensive scheme is better. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can't even outrush his own quarterback.
To be fair, most guys
rush
do.
150 yards a game.
Yeah. Eat, sleep, fantasy. You rocking with the best. NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. We talking mock drafts, running backs. Better follow the conversation with
John,
Dale, Christian, and Armando. Screaming Eat Nation. We doing what we like. Tune in every week. Guarantee we get it hype. Fantasy football enthusiasts. I know you plan to be joining us on Eat, Sleep, Fantasy. Yeah. Eat, Sleep, Fantasy. Eat, Sleep, Fantasy.